I'd like to introduce Natalie from The Hatchery. First of all, thank you all so much for being here. We've got an awesome panel co-hosting with The Hatchery. Natalie's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Thank you all for coming. My name's Natalie Schmulik. I'm from The Hatchery. Has anybody here heard of The Hatchery? Nice, because I probably invited you. So The Hatchery is Chicago's newest food business incubator. We work with Axion Chicago and ICNC. If anyone here is familiar with ICNC, it's Industrial Council of Near West Chicago. Actually, Jenny from Reinhold Distillery works right in that facility there. We're predominantly a manufacturing facility, and in the past 5 years, we've noticed immense growth in the food and beverage space. So the executive director of ICNC and Axion Chicago decided to collaborate and build this food business incubator specifically to help those starting, growing, and building out their food and beverage companies. We're in the process of actually building one of the largest food and beverage manufacturing facilities at Lake and Kedzie. It'll be 100,000 square feet solely for food and beverage production. So we're very excited about that. We're also excited to team up with General Assembly because what we're doing is introducing seminars and educational courses for food and beverage entrepreneurs. So if anyone here is interested in starting or has already started a food and beverage company, please check us out. We've got great seminars. We have the second half of this phenomenal foodpreneurship event happening on Thursday at the ICNC space, same time. And then we also have great seminars including healthy marketing on February 25th. We have a how to start a food business class, which goes over all your licensing and certification, everything you need to get started. We have amazing networking events with influencers and successful food entrepreneurs. If you want to reach me, I'm Natalie at thehatcherychicago.com. Please get in touch with me. I'll also be here after to talk to everyone if you have any questions. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you to Kit and Erin from Windy City Blogger Collective.
All right, hello everyone. So I'm Erin Bassett. This is Kit Graham. We are the co-founders of the Windy City Blogger Collective. It's windycitybloggers.com. We have a network of about 400 bloggers in the Chicago area that blog about everything from food to fashion to lifestyle. We even have a golden retriever who's a member, thegoldenwoofs.com. It's a super fun site. So we're here today. We're super interested and so excited to be moderating the panel. And we'll kind of get things started. Kit also runs a food blog. So I'm going to ask a lot of the questions about their past and things like that, and then Kit's going to get into what's actually happening in the Chicago food industry because while I eat and do things, I don't really pay attention. So I'm going to have the panelists go through and introduce themselves, and part of their intro is to answer the question, what was your first experience working in the food and beverage industry? Take it away, Jenny.
All right, I guess I should go first. My name is Jenny Solberg-Katzman. I am co-founder of Reinhold Distillery. We are located right over on Fulton and Damon. We specialize in all fruit brandies and grappas. I own the business with my father, Charlie, and we opened up in November 1st of 2013, so we basically just turned 2. And we're currently distributed in Chicago or Illinois, Utah, Indiana, and then a number of states coming up shortly here. My first job in the food and beverage industry is this one, so brand new.
Phil Tadros, co-founder of Bow Truss and Aquanaut, and we just launched Bunny the Micro Bakery with a Michelin star chef, Elena Reagan. She's amazing. Besides throwing kegs in the woods, I used to run food up to the skyboxes at Soldiers Field when I was like 14, 15. That was my first job in food, I guess. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Ryan Arnold. I work in the wine business, specifically work with Let Us Entertain You, purchase wine for the restaurant group. In addition, I make a little bit of wine out in California, and I also run a local wine distributor here in Chicago. And my first job in the food and beverage industry was kind of similar, actually, working at concession stands in Wrigley Field.
I'm Ann Owen, co-owner of Owen and Alchemy. It's a juice bar, plant-based food concept in Logan Square. We also have a little mini shop inside of Italy, downtown. And I am currently fundraising to open up a few new stores here in Chicago. I guess this counts. This is my first real job in the food and beverage industry, but I started as a cabana girl at Knollwood Country Club, serving alcohol at 15 years old.
I'm Matt Matros. I'm the founder of Protein Bar. It's a 22-unit chain of healthy food quick serve restaurants based here in Chicago. We also have locations in Denver and Boulder, as well as Washington, D.C. I'm now the CEO of Farmed Here, which is the longest running leading indoor vertical farm. So that's kind of a mouthful of saying that we grow produce indoors using hydroponic technology. My first job in food kind of relates to the story of Protein Bar. I like to say my first job in food was as an unpaid consumer of it. I grew up as the fat kid. So I ate a lot of food. I heard all the names in the book and ended up losing about 50 pounds on a high protein diet in 2002. Kept the weight off, drinking protein shakes and high protein foods, and that was the impetus that I needed to start Protein Bar. So thank you guys for being here.
Awesome.
It is awesome. All right, thank you guys. So I'm going to direct the first question at Ryan, but then everyone else can kind of chime in. So you started out at Wrigley Field serving concessions. That doesn't necessarily connect easily to being a sommelier. So talk us through a little bit how you went from that first job into getting into wine.
Yeah, it was actually shortly after working at Wrigley Field, I moved to Italy for 2 years. Went to university through Loyola Chicago in Rome. Liked it so much, took the next couple semesters off and stayed. I moved from Rome up to Torino, up to the northwest of Italy, which is where, any wine drinkers out there? Okay, cool. Well, so Rome is not known for wine, but the northwest in Torino, really close to Switzerland and France, is where Barolo and Barbaresco, the really, I guess, two of the most noteworthy wines of Italy come from. At that point, I fell in love with it, stayed there for a couple of years, came back to Chicago and wanted to find a job that would allow me to travel back and forth from Chicago to Italy, which is what led me, before Let Us Entertain You, to importing. So I used to import Italian wine, bring it from Italy to the States, and then introduce it to restaurants. And actually, that's how I ended up at Let Us Entertain You. I used to knock on the doors of the restaurants, introduce the restaurants to my wine portfolio, and then here I am now. They actually hired me within the company to run their wine programs and educate their servers at the restaurant level.
Okay, so then Anne, how did you get started at a country club to now making like super healthy juices that we should all drink every day?
Well, I definitely did not take a direct path to what I'm doing now. I had this is scary, over a 10-year career in magazine publishing. Most recently, I was publisher of Miami Magazine, which is the equivalent to CS Magazine, if you guys are familiar with that, down in Miami. It's a luxury lifestyle magazine. And for me, I won't get too long into this, but for me, I reached a point where I just kind of was over the luxury lifestyle, vapid, kind of surface level industry that is the world I lived in. And I started doing a lot of research on, plant-based food, the health benefits, and also the environmental benefits of that. Got really into that personally. And when I reached a point, and I felt like my snapping point, when I could no longer be the publisher of a magazine, I quit cold turkey. I had to push myself out of the nest. It was a big decision, and it was about 4 years in the making. So the juice bar thing was something that was sort of my daydream, my exit strategy to when I was a magazine publisher. So kicked myself out of the nest with no job and spent a couple of months soul searching. I went on a yoga retreat. It was a very stressful couple of months. But then decided to come back to Chicago and do what I kind of always wanted to do, which was to build a plant-based food juice bar concept. And for me to be able to do it in Chicago was exciting, because that's where I'm originally from. So.
Awesome. Okay, so Jenny, this is your first job in the food and bev industry. Anne's got a history of magazine publishing. What was your career, your life like before you got into this?
Yeah, so Reinhold for me was something that I grew up with. The actual process and hobby of making the product that we make today was something just very inherent to me. So in terms of starting the business, it was just taking that next step. In terms of my experience before in career path, I was just in sales, really go-getter, quota hitting sales, hardcore sales environment, which my dad, who told me if I ever wanted to run my own business, that was really the foundation of running a business. So I went from tech sales into making my family business a family hobby a business.
Awesome. Okay. So let's go down to Matt. Besides, I'm assuming you didn't sell Girl Scout cookies, but besides having like lemonade stands and little things as a kid, what was your first foray into entrepreneurship?
You know, I like to joke that my only experience in the restaurant industry before I started one was going to. So I know there's a lot of future entrepreneurs in this room, so sort of unrelated to the question you just asked, I'm sort of imploring you to just do it and get out there and don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of doing an experience that you've never done before, because you can. The story of Protein Bar, I moved to Chicago in 2005 after finishing graduate school at University of Michigan. I came here to work for Kraft Foods. So I was selling cheese for Kraft, which, as you can see, I still can't say with a straight face, even after all these years. I was working out in the suburbs, and literally working out in the suburbs at Lifetime Fitness in Old Orchard, and I used to pay $8 a day to get this protein shake that they would put these little tiny scoops of protein into. So after about a year and a half of doing that, I started putting protein into a baggie, and I would take it to the cafe after working out before going to Kraft and say, hey, will you blend this up? And they would charge me $2 for a banana and milk. And after about a year and a half of that, I said, aha, there's my idea. I want to start a shake shop. So I originally started Protein Bar as somewhat of a Jamba Juice competitor. We since pivoted to add food. But again, the story of entrepreneurship just goes to me solving a problem for myself. So circling back to what I was saying at the beginning, if you guys have a problem or an idea that doesn't go away and it stays in your head forever, and it's a problem that you want to solve and you can find a way to solve it, then that's your business idea right there.
Awesome. I like solving my own problems too. That's how our business started, basically. We would be drunk in the back of cabs going, we should do this, and then we did. Okay, so Phil, as you have made your way and started all of this whole suite of different companies, what kind of support team have you built around yourself?
Well, I mean, I lean on everybody. I mean, most of the projects that we start are, based on, a person or a talent, or, like the brewery, for example, it's Eric. He's the brewmaster, he's the brand, and he's also a contributor to the art. And, with Bunny, it's Elena. I'm just facilitating and fighting for and doing what I can, So I would say, luckily, so I started out in coffee. I dropped out of school when I was 19, opened up a little coffee shop, and out of that, Dojo started, which is like our innovation firm. And luckily I have an office of people that I can lean on for everything. So, not to make it sound easy, but I have a lot of support and I have a lot of people to lean on, whether it be like talent or branding or legal or accounting or whatever. So lots of support. Is that the answer? I don't know.
Yeah, that'll work.
For sure.
People that jacks of all trades that can kind of do a little bit of everything. And same question.
Well, yeah, I was just going to jump in, so I'm glad you asked me. When people ask about, becoming an entrepreneur and my, advice for them, I always say make sure you have a strong support network. Make sure you have a strong support network in your family, your close friends, other people who are entrepreneurs that you respect, because you will need them. There's like no other time when you will need them more. And to actively seek them out and make sure they're in place, and because that will definitely get you through. And I'm constantly looking for new people, and again, and even reach people that I just really, really admire, and they might be, they might have been in business for 20 years and super successful, but I think trying to surround yourself with as many people that you respect as possible.
So that was kind of my next question, and I kind of want to hear this from everyone, but like, who is someone within your food niche that you look up to, or that you kind of not necessarily aspire to be, but somebody that you've kind of set out there as like, this is the person that if I could do everything like them, that'd be cool?
I kind of take an opposite approach to what was just said. I definitely agree you need a strong support network, but when I counsel entrepreneurs or people come to me for advice, I always say, listen, no one has ever started Joe's Shack before. No one has ever started whatever that person's business happens to be. Mark Zuckerberg had never started a social network before, and now he's created the greatest one in the world. Steve Ells had never started a burrito shack, and now he has 1,800 Chipotles. Bill Gates had never started an operating platform. So the point being is don't underestimate your gut and what you know and what your vision for your business can be. Yes, you need successful individuals that have either been down a certain road before, but again, don't underestimate what you guys have done and your vision for what you think your business can be.
Yeah, if I could jump back, you basically, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but you're making up your own world, basically, and you might not have the answers or the capital, but you just keep making it up and fighting for it, and along the way, you're going to get mentors and help and investors, good or bad. You're going to have lots of stories, and you just keep fighting for your made-up world. You just got to keep making it up, basically.
Cool. Okay, so entrepreneurs, people that run their own thing and kind of like start their own, make their own job. They wear a lot of hats, and while we have support networks and we can build people around us that can do things like bookkeeping and maintenance, things like that we might not be able to do, what resources do you go to when you immediately realize that something's out of your depth?
I always say go to the bookstore, which is bookstores almost don't even exist anymore, but whenever I have a curiosity or something, there's a book written on every single topic in the world. There's a world expert on everything you could ever imagine. So if there's something that you're curious about, I always just say go to the bookstore.
It's like a Google MBA is what I call
exactly.
it. I just Google things until I get
accounting,
what I need.
go get Accounting for Dummies. I got Restaurant for Dummies, literally. I bought Restaurants for Dummies, and I opened Protein Bar. But there's a book on every topic you could ever imagine.
As an entrepreneur, I think that's something you have to do. You have to be resourceful because you're throwing yourself into a world where you're definitely going to be uncomfortable in a lot of situations because you have to wear so many hats. So self-education is huge, and I say I've had a crash course, like a crash law degree, a crash accounting degree, and all these things. So
yeah, I think in addition to reading books is maybe more obvious answer of just talking to as many people as you can that could be in any way possible affiliated, because you never know what their perspective is and where they're coming from. And I think it's just in those beginning stages of just soaking up as much as you can and then just going for it.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I'm a really shitty reader. I have attention deficit issues. So I, kind of going back to sales and knocking on doors, I always find a mentor, really in whatever I want to do, whether it was importing wine or buying wine or educating in wine within restaurants. There's someone that's done it before, maybe not exactly your style or how you want to maybe emulate that style. Ask questions. It never hurts to ask. Maybe you ask 9 people and they're probably going to shut you down. Maybe one person might say yes and then kind of show you the way. But I think email, social media, reaching out and asking people, you'd be surprised how many people will give you the time of day. Because that's what I'm trying to do. I think once you've made it as an entrepreneur, it's really your not responsibility, but almost to help people along the way, I think.
I don't want to keep jumping in here, but I also think it's a little counterintuitive, but I found a lot of success in reaching out to other juice bars or other people that are doing similar things to me, and I've created a little discussion group, and we're going to go meet with the city together and rally for things that we need from the city, and there's more power in numbers. So I found great success with kind of reaching out to some of my very, very, very direct competitors.
Sure. I know I keep saying go to the bookstore and do what your gut says, but the truth is there are people who've walked that road before, and you'd be surprised how helpful people can be. Even your competitors, I like to say the rising tide raises all ships. And to the extent that you can be friendly within a particular industry with your peers and your competitors, there's sort of like a karma of the business universe that will come back to you in a positive way. And you'd be surprised the type of people that will help, even people that you wouldn't think would.
I was going to say, being in the coffee world and being in the beer world really shares. I mean, it's because they share taps in restaurants, they share accounts, but in general, the culture, opening the brewery was difficult, and we had a lot of support from competitors. But you didn't even look at it as competitors. It was just they were just supportive because they're all fighting the fight together. They want to make their own beer. And so that was a really awesome experience, especially coming from, Bow Trust growing and, coffee. People are helpful, but it's definitely different. And it's probably because it's a single account thing and you're dealing with plumbing and electric and equipment. And people are territorial. But yeah. So as far as what Ann was saying and what Matt was saying, what everybody was saying, I guess. But asking the right people for help can allow you to jump pretty far, and especially in this day and age, you can reach out to anybody and you'll get a response pretty much. You can talk to anybody nowadays.
Yeah, it's an abundance mindset. Like there's more if we all kind of work together can do that. All right, so what is one skill, and I want everyone to answer this, one skill that you never thought you would, under any circumstance, have gained, but now that you've gone through this career and started your own companies, started your own businesses, you can now do that and feel like super confident getting it done?
I always thought fundraising or finance was going to be a difficult topic for me. I had a marketing background, an MBA from Michigan in marketing, and I thought the fundraising process, just given in this world where there's billionaire investors and takeovers and crazy expressions like LBOs that you've never even heard of, you'd be surprised how simple and formulaic fundraising really can be. It's so simple that they have an entire TV show called Shark Tank centered around fundraising in a very simple formulaic way. So I actually never thought I'd be as schooled and as versed on the fundraising topic as I am at having, well, now I did 4 rounds privately at Protein Bar for about $7 million, and then Catterton invested $25 million into Protein Bar a couple years ago. So just having that experience, I never thought I'd get that.
That's a really good point, because I think for so many people it's daunting, and I know for me it was. Like, I remember when I sat down to do my first business plan, and I wanted to start crying and rip my hair out. And but you're right. There's a simple formula to it, and there's a way people want to see information. And if you can find that, or you find someone who's done it before, it shouldn't be a barrier to entry. 100%.
I was gonna say, even with clients, because my main business is Dojo. We consult a lot of people, and I always say to make it easy for people to give you money. Make it easy for people to understand what you're selling them. Make it easy for people to give you money. And I don't know how much I've raised in the last 3 or 4 years for different projects, but it's in the millions. And it's a lot of it is independent people, and it's a lot of people that are either a fan of what you're doing and they want to get involved. I make it super easy to give me money. I even put on Bo Truss's website, Invest. It's like a tab, and we've probably raised like $2 million in this last year just off of customers who are like, I love your product, I see you growing, I want to get involved, and send them a packet, we send them paperwork, they get involved, and it's been pretty nice. I mean, we've gotten offers from VCs for millions that we've turned down because we don't want that much money. We don't need that much money. We don't need to give up that much of the company. So I would say, make it easy for people to give you money.
I'm going to copy you.
I know, I think we all are. Kit and I are like, we're going to go add that to our site. What are some traits or habits that you see as commonalities in foodpreneurs? Is that how we're saying it, foodpreneurs? What do you think people have to have in order to really kind of make it in this industry?
I guess I'll answer that because I'm the newest. I think the biggest thing that I noticed right off the bat was just how big of people they are. Everything, from the amount of time you spend at the bar and the restaurants, everything is around socializing, making relationships, and I guess that goes for every industry in terms of building relationships. But I think there's just an additional element of when you're drinking and enjoying food together, you're kind of sharing something different because what you're selling and what you're really trying to promote is something right in front of you, and it's tangible. And I know my dad, my co-founder, my business partner, is in the filter industry, which is irrelevant, but he always said, once we started this distillery, everyone prefers to talk about booze than filters. So it's a lot more social, and I think it's just a really fun place to be.
I think it's simple for me. It's one word. It's passion, right? Because very few of us, at least in the wine world, whether you're making wine or you're working in a restaurant, at least from my perspective, I didn't get into it to make a lot of money. You really have to enjoy the process and the ride along the way. To me, being an entrepreneur, it's kind of the gift and the curse. You have to really, the line is blurred between your social and personal life. You have to really live what you're doing in this industry. And if you're not enthusiastic about it, there's no reason to do it. Get into a different industry, whether it's any other industry. But food and wine, restaurateur, you have to be passionate about it.
It has to feel authentic also, and you get that from someone who's truly passionate. I was gonna say, there's some restaurateurs here that I very much respect. And they've been in the business for a long time. They're very successful, have a lot of venues. But you'll go on a Saturday night and you'll see the owner, proprietor, like bussing the table. And I think that mentality of no job is too far below you, And I think for me, there was a shift. Like I ran the magazine and I had an assistant, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. You do that, But with this type of thing, when it's service and it comes down to serving people, and you're building a brand that is so much a part of you, it has to feel authentic, and you have to be a part of every single level of the business.
Ditto everything that was just said, but one other thing that food entrepreneurs have that some other industries don't is revenue and EBITDA. So revenue and profit, right? Sounds crazy, but if you think about a lot of tech businesses, sometimes they get crazy valuations and they get crazy amount of attention because of users, right? Well, that's not dollars, that's not profit. So you have to have dollars and profit if you're going to be a sustainable food business, because there's a lot of assets like fixtures, you have physical spaces, or you have equipment, and you need to pay for all those things by driving revenue and then by driving profit. But oftentimes in other industries, when I talk to my tech friends who are starting an app, I have no idea how app valuations or tech valuations are set. I just don't look in that space. But in food, you need revenue and you need EBITDA.
Excellent, because it's real stuff. Okay, so were you guys surprised once you actually sat down and said, okay, this is my business, I'm going to go do it, at either how quickly or slowly it actually came to be? Like the pace of actually getting something opened and started?
Well, I was a little surprised because when I first got started on the research and doing all of the digging, everyone told me that I would take 2 times the amount of time that it took me. So I think that is something I was surprised by. I think the reason that happened, which is maybe contrary to some other things that can pop up in construction for restaurants and concepts and things like that, I did it all myself. I didn't hire out for any of it, like a consultant or anything like that. I think by me knowing the ins and outs of every single step of the licensing, permitting, construction process, I was able to control my timeline a bit better, and that was, as a result of that, I was able to open that much sooner.
I was saying, my first shop, I was 19. I dropped out of school. I was at Columbia College, and I saw an ad in the paper in the reader that said, coffee shop for sale to the right person. I called up. He was selling it for like 20 grand. I bought it for 10 grand. It was $500 a month. It was by the Jarvis train stop. It was the least traveled train stop in Chicago. They wanted to shut it down. And, I didn't know anything. I was 19. I pulled out the carpet. I gutted the place. I built the place, and I opened up, and I sold it a year later because I wanted to move on. I loved the place, but I wanted to move on. And I sold it for like 3 times the amount, and I wrote the contract on a piece of paper. We notarized it at the currency exchange. I sound like I'm 100 years old. And he gave me a check. Bob Carmichael used to work at Shaw's Crab House as a waiter, and he lived next door. And I was like fed up one night because I was working from open to close every single day for the year. And I was just like, I met him at the corner. He was walking his dog at night. I'm like, I'm done. I'm just wiped. And he bought it from me, So it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, just, you don't have to know the answers. You just fight for it, you wing it, you figure it out, and if you fail, it's totally okay. It's a good lesson. So.
Yes, totally to that. And for me, I can say that the last 2 years or 2.5 years I've been building the business have felt like 10 or 20. And I think there's that clutch point too when you have this business idea and maybe you're fundraising or you don't have a space yet and you're not sure it's going to happen. Those days feel like they last forever. So I think for me, and there were several of those times that you have to like put horse blinders on and believe that it'll happen because you're the only one that's going to make it happen. But they're terrifying in those days. Yeah, I mean, it has felt like a very long time, and especially before you get your doors open.
The days are long, but the years are short. Like you look back, like you said, it's only been 2 years. Like I feel like you've been around like forever. Like I've known about this brand for so long. So that's exciting. Okay, my last question in this section, and you don't have to share if you don't want to. But what's next? What are you like, what's on the horizon? What's the next step for your businesses or yourself?
In addition to running farmed here, like I said, the longest running leading indoor vertical farm, I'm actually working on a first of its kind, unique 501c3 restaurant with the Boca Boys. So Rob Katz and Kevin Bain from Boca. So we're excited to announce that here in a few months. It's going to be a really high profile project with some of the most high profile people in all of Chicago, and it's going to be a pretty awesome way to give back to the community.
Well, I mean, you know, we have a group of food companies and we're investing in more. And I mean, the way we're doing it is just as we go along, it's just our own money or people that invest along the way. And we're investing in a fried chicken project, Budlong. It's about to open on Western. And there's a handful of other projects we're trying to work on right now. But it's like once you're, I love the food space, and Matt was saying earlier, you know, you're like when you open up a storefront, and we're in technology too. When you open up a storefront, you know, you're forced to fight. You have bills, you have payroll, you have rent. I love that pressure because you have to perform, you know, and so you know I'm passionate about the food space, and as far as people that are really talented with something and helping fight for them and support what they're trying to do. And so I feel like even though we're in the tech business primarily, a lot of the stuff I've been doing the last 3 years has been like, you know, let's launch these food products and companies and support talent and just grow these brands, you know. So
I mentioned it before, but I'm currently fundraising, another round of fundraising to open some more stores, and it very much feels like I'm back at square one. We're trying to figure out how to take this little concept that we created in Logan Square and figure out how to grow it and how to scale it and what makes the most sense. We're working with some awesome people. Some of them are here tonight. But again, I was talking to Phil before this and Matt before this, and just again picking people's brains because again, all of a sudden now I'm out of my comfort zone, saying, how do I take this little thing that I'm proud of, but how do we take this and then grow it?
We're also working on scaling the business and expansion for other states. So it's also a big step in being able to keep up with demand and also be able to make sure our message gets crossed the way we want it and to when it's further from home.
I don't want to steal Kit's thunder here, but there might be a question on this coming up here. But I work with my wine distributor. We represent about a dozen small family-owned wineries in California, and working on bringing a couple seminars and educational events to Chicago, because I think the beverage scene in Chicago, specifically the wine scene, is very mediocre in town. Due to a lot of reasons we can get into maybe after the conference or later in the panel. But I'm working on helping part of my job is I work in Los Angeles and Maryland, so I get to hear Chicago, really opinions of this city food and wine scene from not just Chicagoans, which is, being from Chicago, you think it's the greatest food and wine scene in the country, but spending time on both coasts, it's not quite that. So I'm working with my partner on bringing food and wine events to this city to help really grow the culture of a really professional wine scene in Chicago.
Okay, so what are some of the trends in terms of consumer drinking and eating habits? Like, what do you think is hot right now? And then is there anything in particular that you're doing to take advantage of the current trends?
I think with food, it's like high quality, casual, you know. I don't know, Matt probably knows a lot about this, but as far as like, you know, like right now with Bunny, we have she's a Michelin star chef. I'm like honored to work with her, and she's making you a burger, but she's also, you know, baking the bread there, and it's so labor intensive because they're such serious chefs, and they're doing like this amazing food in this 700 square foot kitchen, and you walk in and everything's from scratch, and it ranges from, you know, the product quality is ridiculous, and it's just super approachable and simple, and I feel like, you know, people want quality and they want it to be easy to get, and so, you know, I think just fast, casual, high-end, or good quality food that's fast and simple, you know?
Even beyond the gourmet or the quality casual trend, it's really around transparency. People want to know not just where the food is manufactured or grown, but actually what is that specific ingredient. And consumers more and more are starting to get more educated. I don't know if it's the Googleization of our society where people now have information at their fingertips, but now people are starting to get more skeptical around specific ingredients, specific manufacturers, specific brands, and they're seeking a level of transparency that's never happened before. And what's happened with Chipotle over the last several months is probably the big tipping point in terms of tying back to actual individual farms where things are grown.
I like to say it's conscious consumers, and I think there's a movement towards more conscious consumers and consumers that are educated and educate themselves and take that time to do that. So it goes beyond just going to a place where they trust that the meat might be good. You know, they want to know exactly where it is from, and they want to research why it's good. And also, I mean, I think their footprint, the carbon footprint. Again, it's a newer movement, but people want to feel good about the fact that, you know, their footprint, the way that they're eating is impacting the world in a positive way.
I would say I think people are shocked that they've been lied to for so long as far as like what is in everything. And I think now that people know that they've been lied to for so long, they want to know what the hell is going on, and they want quality, and they want to know that it's been, you know, they're not eating a bunch of garbage that's going to kill them. They, you know, it's pretty, the food world's very scary what they've done. So it's, you know, it's now that we have all the information out there, it's, you want to know where it's coming from, what it is, what am I eating, what are you feeding me, you know, it's very important.
There's a lot of information sharing that maybe wasn't there before, but they want to know that, and you have to provide that for them and have it easy for them to access.
What piece of advice do you find yourself giving most often to people who want to get into the food and beverage industry or launch a business here in Chicago?
Just do it, basically. You're right. You know, it's just, you know, it's like if I had cards on me today and I was like, oh, this is my company, it's like you're creating that world by letting people know, and you're believing in yourself, and you're fighting for this name and this logo and this brand, and you're packaging your world around it, you know, and just go to market, you know, go to a farmer's market, you know, go sell it online, you know what I mean? Give it away somewhere. Like, just play around, do it, don't be afraid, you know, just make sure it's quality and be honest and sell it, you know?
Chicago is just a good city to start something. I can't imagine a better city because it's metropolitan enough, it's respected enough, there are enough creative people here, but people are so supportive and they want to get behind things, and they will help you if they can, and with no ulterior motive. So I think there's no reason not to.
When I started my first wine label, I had to spend, which was a lot for me personally, it was about $50,000 in bottling this wine, and I had no idea. I created the brand, I didn't know if it was going to work, I had no idea mostly who I was going to sell it to, so it was a bit of a risk, and it ended up working, luckily, but I think just do it is the best slogan you can have, because if it doesn't work, what's the opposite? You're going to fail, right? And I think that you really aren't an entrepreneur, or you haven't really learned a lesson in business until you have your first failure. And speaking on behalf of the guy that started Let Us Entertain You, Rich Melman, back in, I think it was 1971, the guy has a James Beard Lifetime Achievement Award. Still to this day, he's in the restaurants working 14 hours a day. And if you ask him what is his number one lesson that he's learned, was his first restaurant didn't really succeed. It was a very slow start, RJ Grunt's. So that fear of failure is what gets him out of bed and what keeps him up late at night, but it's really what inspires him. So I don't think you're going to understand that until you go out and try it. So you're either going to accomplish your goal that you set out to do. If not, you're going to fail. You're going to learn either way. You have to take the risk.
He's right. No, fear is the biggest problem, really, for most people. They're afraid, and that's the biggest problem. There's excuses. I don't have enough money. What if people don't like it? You know, it's just all those excuses of fear are your biggest problem, really. And I heard something about Rich. I heard he still, like, calls the owner of each restaurant every day, every morning. He starts the day, I think he calls, 'cause we used to be neighbors with the Summer House people, and they told me that he calls everybody every day to, yeah, it's awesome. So be involved, yeah, and just do it. Like he's getting lots of.
One thing I'll say, don't be afraid to not be an entrepreneur. Just because it's sexy right now, because Uber's worth $20 billion and Mark Zuckerberg's worth what? It's like really cool. It's like rock star, entrepreneurs are the new rock stars, but if it's not in you, that's okay, right? You don't need to start something. I will say, though, that if you have an idea that's in your head and it doesn't go away, and you think about it the last thing before you go to bed, and you think about it first thing in the morning, then that's an idea you should pursue.
I think that's really solid advice. Did you have another comment?
Sorry, I was saying also being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to like start your own company. I mean, there's entrepreneurs within organizations all the time. You know, being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to like go make up a brand and create a company. There's entrepreneurs that I'm with every single day that are working on projects internally, and so it doesn't really mean that you need to be like on your own first and having people believe in you. I mean, it's within an organization too. It's what you're probably working on maybe right now, and so I think that's important too. Yeah.
I guess one last thing, just hearing what he was saying, the underlying thing I think is to do something that you're passionate about, which everyone's kind of touched on already. Because if you're in it just for money, then it's not gonna go very far. So even though everyone would like to make money, but as long as you're passionate about it and you're not forcing it, then I think it's probably the right answer.
Yeah, so I know we've been talking about just doing it and not being afraid, but at the same time, failure is a really big part of the food and beverage industry. And has your definition, personally, your definition of failure changed over time as you've been working in the industry?
I mean, I look at my failures, as failures, but they're still successes because then I figured this out, or then this happened, or you learn that. And so I'm sure you've heard that before, so it's like, it's all a learning experience, and, you're paying for it in different ways, and it's okay to fail, I mean, as long as your intentions are right, and you're trying to figure it out, I mean, failing is a part of growing in your next project, and it's okay.
You just have to build thick skin, and failure is good if you can learn from it and be resilient and pivot, and you're gonna keep failing. It's going to happen, and that's how you get to the next best thing and something better. And so being comfortable in that world, and just you have to let go of ego, which is a very easy thing to say when it's your thing and you have everything vested in it and all your friends and family, but you kind of have to let go of it. There's an example I was going to use that one of my friends uses of a restaurateur again who is very good at creating concepts, and if they don't work right away, changing it, and instead of letting it sit and because you're too caught up in it and your ego's too much in it, and you're not, you don't want to change it because you still feel like you're right. But sometimes you just need to pivot, and you need to be wrong, and you need to admit that you're wrong so that you can make changes.
I feel like I'm constantly failing. I feel like everything I'm in is failing. You know what I mean? But it's growing. You know what I mean? But it's just always more difficult, and there's more bills, and it's harder. But it's I've learned to just enjoy that and just keep going. You know what I mean? Because it's not like I have something that's oh, one of these food products are just a success. Yeah, Botress is great. People love Botress. Botress bleeds tons of money. You know what I mean? But we are growing, and we're fighting for something, and that's just a part of it. And I've gotten used to just struggling. I don't love struggling, but I love struggling because everything's moving forward. You know what I mean? It's not
it feels good.
It's just a part of the struggle. It's not supposed to be easy for you. If it was easy for you, then you probably, I don't know if you deserve it. I mean, that's ridiculous. You got to struggle. You got to struggle, and you got to fail, and you got to fight, and you got to be okay with it. That's it.
I think an interesting part of it too, and this has been interesting for me because Owen Alchemy, it's a new business, 15 months. People come up to me and say, "Oh my God, you're killing it. You must be so happy." And right inside, you're like, "Oh my God, I'm losing so much money. I can't." Right? My sister invested. She just had a kid. I don't even know if this is gonna work. I don't know about payroll this week, and so just figuring out how to live in that world and be yeah, things are great. I mean, because sometimes you can be honest, but sometimes you also just have to be yep, they're great. Brand is growing.
You just gotta be a crazy person, basically. No, because it's like that. I mean, we have 55 employees, and we're opening 9 new stores with Botress specifically, and payroll is difficult. We always hit it. We're growing, we're fine, but that's just a part of business. You struggle. You're growing. If I guess if we wanted to figure out how to not struggle, we would have stopped a long time ago. We had the roaster in the store, and we could be fine. You know what I mean? But there's demand, and there's so much more that you want to achieve, and there's people that want to help you out with the store here, and then there's someone who wants, the Virgin Hotel's I want you to put your coffee in our hotel, and we're oh shit, we have to come up with crazy amounts of equipment money. There's constant struggles, there's constant fire drills. Some days are miserable, and some days are the best, and it's okay.
So you guys have touched a little bit upon growing pains, and I'd love to hear about any growing pains you've had in terms of expanding, moving locations, outgrowing locations, and how you go about overcoming those challenges.
When I opened Protein Bar, as I mentioned, we were just a shake shop. I was trying to be a Jamba Juice competitor, and frankly, we're not doing very well. We were doing about $2,000 a day in sales. We needed, at our Loop location, first one across the street from Sears Tower, we needed to be doing 3 just to break even. So we were a pretty wide delta between where we were and where we needed to be just to break even. I added food to the menu, and that's when things took off. I remember our first day we did $3,000. I was so pumped up. I'm like, holy shit, we'll never be able to do 3,500. That was it, 3,000, that's it. And then the next day we did 3,500. I'm like, okay, that was it. Never will we be able to hit 4. The next day we hit 4. And you just continue to grow and grow and grow. And we had huge, long lines. I remember it was July 24th, 2010. And we had a 27-minute wait in line. And I only know that it was 27 minutes because I was working the register. And a receipt would print up. And I would take that receipt. And whoever the person that walked in the door at the time that receipt printed up, I would write, blue shirt, glasses. And then by the time the person with the blue shirt and the glasses came, snaked up and through, I would take his receipt and then staple it to it. Long story short, 27 minutes. Guy's in line the whole 27 minutes, and he's snaking through the first restaurant. He's like staring at me, and he's giving me the evil eye, and I'm apologizing to people for the wait. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for your patience. And this guy's continuing to snake through the restaurant, and I'm ready for him to just lash into me. And he gets up after his 27-minute wait, and he says, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. He's like, no. He's like, I saw people complaining in that line, but they still stood in it. And there was some power to that and some magic to the fact that these people were still waiting in line. And now he's our biggest investor. But it was still one of those pains. And as people were coming up, they're like, oh, it's a good problem to have. And I would always say, good problem is still a problem. So point being, you make it through, you make it work, and stick to your gun.
Well, people keep asking, and we're in wholesale too, so it's like we're roasting coffee, and like, when Whole Foods is like, they give you a call and they're like, it's doing really well in the 5 stores you're in, we want to put you in everyone in Illinois, and then there's the Virgin Hotel, and so it's like a lot of these wholesale accounts too is forcing production growth because the demand is there. And then with the locations, I mean, I get landlords every day, and I'm sure a lot of people do, where they want to give you a store, they want the lease there, and they want you to be an amenity of the building, and they want this and that. And then you're like, well, if you build it, we can make awesome coffee there, And so we're fortunate now where people are building things out for us. I mean, there's still mom and pops buildings that we gut and do ourselves. But for the most part, now I feel like it's the demand. It's hard to say no when someone's saying, like, we want you here. And we're like, this would be great. Let's figure it out. How much we need to come up with. We'll get it later. You know what I mean? Like, so, it's hard not to want to grow when people are asking you to grow, so.
The greatest way to get through growing pains is to close your eyes and have a vision for your business and to go after that vision unwaveringly. Of course, we need to pivot, right? Protein Bar needed a pivot. We needed sales. But if you close your eyes and you think about what your brand or what your business or whatever it is you're selling can be, and you stick to that, and you go after it with unequivocal fervor, you'll, if nothing else, go down swinging.
We had a business model where we produce, at our Logan Square location, we produce the juice, and it's raw and it's unpasteurized, and we make it fresh every day. And as we are planning to scale, our model and the model that we're fundraising on currently is like the hub and spoke model, right? So our Logan Square location is essentially our commissary where we produce the juice, and then we open up these little retail locations, low barrier to entry because not a lot of capital investment, small little spaces because you don't have to produce the juice there. They're quick, they're fast, they're cheap. But then now all of a sudden, the FDA is cracking down on unpasteurized juice. So, which we thought was maybe several years out, is sort of being fast-tracked. So, in a very short amount of time, we may not be able to take that juice that we're making in Logan Square and simply bring it to another location. We would have to make the juice at every single retail location. That changes everything. That changes our entire business model, right? And essentially, it also changes like the core and the ethos of who we are, right? Because if we were to, you could pasteurize it and you could make it super easy, but then your juice isn't raw and living and alive. And so, that's something that all of a sudden we're dealing with, and I wasn't dealing with it, 2 weeks ago, or I thought it was 3 years down the line, and now I'm like, oh hell, all right, cool, something else.
what do you think the Chicago food and beverage scene is lacking? What do we need here, other than better wine or more wine?
Biggest thing it's lacking, it represents the single biggest opportunity, and that's innovation. We talked about the coasts being where all the cool stuff happens first. It's either LA, New York, or San Francisco. It's just a fact. So that gives us great opportunity here in Chicago to, I hate to say it, borrow ideas from the coast, bring it here, put our unique spin on it. So that innovation that's sort of lacking here, sort of that happens second, is totally fine by me because that presents us with great opportunity.
I get frustrated with this topic because it's the fucking Chicago politics that need to change. That's why we, in the wine and the beverage, the distribution is such a challenge here in Chicago. It's twofold. One is there aren't a lot of operators, owners of restaurants that employ sommeliers or beverage directors. They lump that position into, oh, there's a manager, a GM, or an assistant GM in the restaurant. Why do we need a sommelier? The position isn't highly regarded in this city. So you have the issue of you have an uneducated, very talented manager at the restaurant level, but not educated to the point where they should be making decisions to create a wine list. So what happens then is you have a lot of these distributors in Chicago that take advantage of the pay-to-play. So a lot of these distributors, and this is completely forbidden. For example, in New York City, if I work at RPM and I can buy 20 cases of Prosecco a week, the restaurant in Logan Square that can buy 3 cases of that same Prosecco, we have to pay the same price. There's no volume discounting in New York City. It's all posted pricing. Here in Chicago, it's wheel and deal, right? You can pay, if I'm a restaurant like RPM, huge volume, I can pay $96. That distributor down the way in Logan Square can charge somebody that's doing 3 cases, as opposed to 20 a week, $108. In addition to that, there's a lot of under-the-table dealings that happen that basically mediocre wine that really isn't selling. The importer distributor in Chicago can say, here's $10,000, pour this really shitty Pinot Grigio, and it's really hard for a lot of people to turn that down, and that's just created a cesspool of mediocre beverage programs in the city. It's an issue that's been happening here. I started importing distributing in 2004, and it really hasn't gotten much better. Leave it at that.
No, I
It
mean,
really gets me fired up at this topic.
Well, you're making me think of a bunch of things because we self-distribute our beer, and we have to have the same price all across. We can't change the price as we self-distribute. It's one price, and then Matt actually was involved earlier on, and I was doing a bar called Oyster Pail, and I'm building the place. I built 2 bars, a really cool speakeasy. It was an adult bookstore. It was a total dive. That's where Bunny is now, and I had the whole basement of this building. I was going to make this really cool 2-floor bar, did all this construction, built this bar, and then I didn't even realize that because I own the brewery, I can't open this bar. You know what I mean? And I'm like, holy shit, really? And then, I realized I have to dilute myself to 4.9% so I'm reaching out to people who wants to take over this community bar project. I don't even know what to do with it anymore, And so as far as you're saying, the law and stuff like that, we're not allowed to even change prices as self-distributors. Oh, I don't know, but we don't have a distributor yet. Maybe it was interesting when you said that they change prices. We can't change prices. We have to have the same price for everybody. So we should just talk in general. But sorry to bother you guys with this.
So they've covered the 2 other alcohol categories, wine and beer, and now for me, representing spirits, distributors are the worst. But no, there are good, exciting opportunities with distributors as well if they have the reach and the gusto to be able to genuinely represent your product. But in the beginning, when you are with a much smaller distributor, hoping that they are repping your brand like you'd like them to, but they simply just don't have the bandwidth to be able to get to the number of accounts you need to reach. As owner of Rheinhall, you have to do a lot of the sales yourself. But unfortunately, with the spirits, contrary to beer and wine, depending on if you have a self-distribution model, you ultimately sell for the distributor as the owner at their margin, which is funny how it works like that. But it is politics, and it's the way the system is. And fortunately, there has been some changes if you guys are interested about alcohol politics. Wine started the same way and has gained some rights. Then beer gained some rights in terms of self-distribution. And spirits, I think, was probably going to be another 5 years out. But either way you look at it, they control the system.
Yeah, it's now we're opening a brew pub in Roscoe Village, and because we're opening a full restaurant brew pub for Aquanaut, now we have to get a distributor. So now, like, our 200 accounts that we've created in this last 12 months, basically, we have to just like hand over to someone else to take like 30%, you know, to open up this restaurant brew pub. So it's kind of crazy.
And one last point, but in defense of Chicago restaurants, another big hurdle is the issue of consignment. So the reason you see all these grand wine lists in New York City and San Francisco, for example, inventory, right? Here in Chicago, it's a 3-tier system, mostly all throughout America, but in Chicago, it's really upheld. And my friends in New York and San Francisco can build a 550, 600 bottle wine list and spend $10,000 because they're legally allowed to consign from collectors. So a collector has a huge deep cellar. They can basically list the wine, you as a diner can buy that wine, and then the collector is compensated after the sale. Right now it's a huge legal issue in New York City. They're trying to ban that. They don't want these restaurants to continue to do that. They want the restaurants to have to go through that 3-tier system. I don't think it's been settled yet. It's still in court.
Really quick though, while there were some very industry-specific things that were set up here that were sort of negative on Chicago, I would like to say that after opening businesses in Chicago, Denver, Boulder, City of Oak Brook, City of Schaumburg, Virginia, Washington, D.C., from a just base permitting in time from idea to getting a business permit, I will say actually Chicago's the easiest. So be thankful for that. And I don't know if it's because it's relatively a pro-business city or because we're here or because City Hall is just right there. But in all of those cities that I've done in, Chicago is the easiest.
Yeah, I think Chicago is easy if you're just getting a normal business license. Super easy. Retail food license, I'll go get one right now if it was Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's super easy for the most part. The thing is when you deal with things that they don't know about, like roasting coffee as much or like juice, like they just don't know. So sometimes you can get a health, like I have a cafe with State Farm. It's called Next Door on Diversey and Clark. I don't know if you're familiar with Next Door Cafe. So I own 97% of that cafe, and I'm facilitating their cafe experience at State Farm. The health department comes in, and they decide that that wall is not okay. I have a million other cafes where that wall is okay. So you end up sometimes being held up because of a person and an opinion, and there's no like specific law for it that you can be like, oh, well, this is the way it is, you know. So a lot of it's a gamble sometimes, but you know, I've had a good experience in general with the health department for retail food. It's usually really, really easy. But when you're dealing with raw juice or even roasting coffee, a lot of times they don't know what's going on or what it is. They've never dealt with it before.
And there aren't rules or regulations in place to deal with them. Like my situation with the raw juice, they liken it to when restaurants first started serving raw fish and doing sushi. And the health department was like, whoa, 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 you know, you can't do that. People will get sick. And then it takes, 5 to 10 years to get new laws in place that will address that and make sure that the raw fish is safe, right? And so, right, when you're doing something that's new, and that's one of the things that with Chicago, like you said, I think, Matt, that there's all this awesome stuff that's happening on the coast, and it does come to Chicago, and it comes to Chicago a little bit late. But then you suffer the, kind of that delay because those systems are not in place. And I was just going to say, cold pressed juice, they look like at us like we're crazy.
I just want to make sure that everyone here knows where to buy your products. So for some of you, it might be a bigger question than for others. But if there's like a Grubhub option or a Postmates or a Caviar option, or if you're in stores or if you're brick and mortar, like I would just love for everyone to know how to buy your stuff.
My wife always orders Owen and Alchemy on Postmates all the time. It just people ring my doorbell. I'm just like, who is it? It's Owen and Alchemy. Postmates. You're building something.
Answer for you.
You're building something now.
We're building a new revised site, so you'll be able to. You can order now straight from our website, but it'll be a better system, and we'll be able to ship nationally as well. Hopefully, within the next couple days.
For all Ryan Hall products at retail level, they're first of all listed on our website for all the Chicago locations, but most well-known would be Binny's. They carry most of our products. And then on the on-premise, which is in the bars and restaurants, just ask the bartender for some Ryan Hall. If they don't have it, then It's good.
Demand it.
We'll get it to them.
For
We also have a tasting room, sorry, where we do tours, cocktails, cocktail classes, part events, etc. But you're able to also buy the bottles there.
For the coffee, we have the retail stores, and you can buy online, and then different wholesale accounts. For the beer, we're at a lot of the Bennies. We just got approved for Whole Foods Midwest, so we're trying to figure that out. And we're in about 200 accounts with the brewery right now. So a lot of great restaurants like Avec and Nico, and there's a good list of them.
Ryan, what about your wine?
My wine, the first vintage is sold out. The new one comes out March 8th, and it's probably going to be restaurant only. Here's my shameless plug for social media, but you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram, because that's where I really, to develop a wine program, scarcity is key, and selling it on premise is where you build the brand. Retail is a little bit trickier. It's maybe in a bottle shop in Logan Square, one in Evanston, and then maybe one up in Andersonville, but haven't decided yet. Probably March 8th or 9th is when I'll know for sure. It's a Pinot Noir, too, from Sonoma. And for the record, I love Chicago, and I think we have one of the best. I'm born and raised here in Chicago, but I think we have one of the best culinary scenes. I just think it's not until you start to travel where we like to pat ourselves on the back lot. I think we can do better, and there needs to be a dissenting voice in the room. And my face turns red because I work in LA, and a lot of LA, they're talking about how great LA is, and they're hating on Chicago. So that's why I've created this forum with my friend Steve Morgan, who's the wine director at Formentos. But we're just trying to help build the community and push Chicago to really reach its capability of what we could be.
Protein Bar has 22 locations nationwide. We have 13, soon to be 14 Chicagoland locations. We're mostly urban, so a lot of our locations are in the Loop. The nearest one to us right now is at 352 North Clark and Kinsey and River North. And Farm Tier, we grow organic produce. So we grow baby kale, baby arugula, we grow microgreens, we grow basil, and you can see the Farm Tier branded products at Whole Foods and Mariano's.
We're going to open it up to Q&A.
Tactics in educating your consumers on the transparency.
Yeah, you guys all have unique products, and so is there anything you guys have done you found more successful in being transparent or in educating specifically about your own products?
I think we're open in general. If anybody had a question, we'd share anything with them as far as like how we market it or, show people right off the bat. With the coffee, we have a lot of farm direct relations. Dennis, our green buyer, is traveling all around the world most of the time right now. And we're meeting farmers, we're shaking hands, we buy this great coffee in Costa Rica from this farm, and we even tell them, we loved it, and we just wanted them to give it like more water and do this and that, and we told them we'll pay you this much more, and they were like worried, like, are you going to buy it? Like when you try it again? We're like, no, we know it's good. We just want you to do this and this, and we bought it and we loved it. So I think we should just do a better job of telling those kind of stories. But I think we are just open with any product we use at any company we use, any company that we have. And you made me think that we should just do a better job of telling those stories. Thank you.
I was just going to say, for us, it comes down to hiring. It's extremely important. And, you're hiring people that, they don't get paid huge wages. It's basically retail, right? But they've got to be so knowledgeable. So it comes down to finding the right people. And we're lucky because we can find people that are very passionate about plant-based food, so they want to be in it for that. But then constant education so that they can then share their message. Because I can't be there, sharing the message and educating people. But it's a lot, and it's intensive, actually, to keep them so that you feel comfortable that they're sharing the message that these people need to hear to feel comfortable.
100% true. The greatest marketing you have is a good experience or a good product. So let the product speak for itself. More tactically speaking, super fast response to all consumer touch points, whether it's emails that come in through a website or a Yelp review or a tweet, tweet. That's the best way to be trustworthy and to build that trust in your consumer.
Okay, are they finding ways to share risk with their suppliers and to lock down those relationships?
Well, there's certain coffees we could buy, when it's low. I mean, it depends on how much cash we have, but I mean, there's times where we'll go with smaller groups, and buy somewhere else together. But it really comes down to how much we have to work with. But in coffee and commodities, there's certain times where you can buy certain types of coffee. When it's low, it depends how much money we have at the time, how much we can book out, pre-book. When I hired Dennis, I was like, find the best coffees and just charge properly. So we give that kind of freedom as far as quality goes.
If the question was around hedging risk, around specific commodities, the only way to do that is by a futures market, right? So buy orange juice futures or pork belly futures or coffee futures. So that's really the only way to hedge your risk. In the instance of protein bar, when we first started, quinoa is central to our menu, and we were one of the first people or first brands using quinoa. I was buying quinoa for $2.09 a pound wholesale, and right now it's $4.66 a pound. So just give you an idea to show you a global demand, and we had no way to protect for that. The good news is quinoa grew in popularity, so I sort of think of that delta as sort of the cost of marketing, right? It was just because quinoa became popular, then I guess that's what we had to pay for it. So the short answer is there's no way to hedge your risk unless you have a futures or a commodity market.
Okay, so the question is about the first person who's not a co-founder or equity-based that was a huge game changer. Okay.
This actually speaks to one of my failures. So my first person, so sort of my number two at Protein Bar, I was so behind. We were talking about growing pains and just needing to catch up and just needing bodies. I didn't take enough time, effort, and diligence to spend with that human being, just understanding if he was the right fit. I was just so happy. I grabbed him. I said, here's the keys. Help us grow. It ended up working out well for the brand and for him personally and for me. But the short answer is I could have spent more time just understanding that person's ethos and vision fits with the same ethos and vision that I had for the brand. Shortest answer is it's fucking hard. You just can't.
I'm sure it's a common theme with all of us, but yeah, our like number one at the store, there was a time when we messed up, and in those first couple months, that's so key. Because again, you can't be everywhere, and that person is a representation of your new little brand. So, like you, I kick myself for, again, it's instead of that interview being 20 minutes and rushed, like make it an hour because it pays off so much in the long run.
And check references. Sorry to usurp the question, but my sort of biggest mistake, biggest learning, as I relate to my next businesses is hire experts. Don't hire people that you think kind of maybe sort of do the job because they're kind of cheap. Go spend a little bit more and get an expert in that field. Supply chain, go get a person who's done supply chain for McDonald's. You need marketing, go get someone who is the CMO at Potbelly. Instead of your friend who you think's a good athlete, who maybe could be versatile, it's a little bit cheaper, just get the best person.
No, it's actually cheaper to spend more on, experience or quality. It's cheaper to spend because you're, jumping over time and you're getting experience and spend money on, if you're going to spend money on the advice or the initial team member, it's cheaper to spend more on better quality. It's going to take you way further faster, and it's actually less expensive, really.
And take care of the people that are in it for all the right reasons and who you trust implicitly.
So how has technology changed your business from social media to point of sale and everything in between?
Well, I'll go back to, Mr. Noah's question. I think in terms of spreading the word on like the sources that we use or the way we make things and our process and our story and all these things that are things that I think makes us unique and important and the brand that you should invest in. Social media helps spread that word. And I think it's hard to communicate some of those smaller details and, like a poster or a flyer or something like that. And you can be very consistent with that message as well through those social media outlets. So I think it just helps spread the word on the things you want your brand to be known for. And I think it's a great tool to take advantage of.
Yeah, people are involved in the growth story. They're watching the photo of, I'm going to rent the store. We gutted this store. They're watching in real time just everything happening. It's pretty amazing. As far as just that community of, that audience, that story you're telling, and the dialogue. And then as far as even commerce goes, now it's easy to, contribute and, buy whatever product it is or learn where to buy it. And so just that story and that dialogue and just that commerce, with technology now is amazing,
There's also just so much data out there now, and the POS systems have grown to a point where you used to have all this other software on the back end to analyze your the trends and all that. Now it's basically at your fingertips, so your biggest customers, what they spend, what hours do they spend, how do they spend differently one day to the next, and there's a lot of power in that if you just if you have the time to spend with it and analyze it.
One beautiful thing about food and beverages businesses is that while technology is a great conduit to either spread a word or get your food to people's mouths faster, you're still evoking a human connection. And that's what's really special about what we do as food entrepreneurs, whether it's serving someone in a restaurant or sending them a bottle of juice and having them swallow that juice and enjoy that feeling and think about how that nourishment makes them feel. You don't get that in too many other businesses, and that's what's really special about what we do.
And I think specifically about social media, you have to pick one and really be all in. Right now there's Snapchat, Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, just to name a few. And what I did was I created a hashtag and I monitored the hell out of it, right? When you monitor, kind of what Matt said, you have to respond quickly. You'll be surprised when you check that hashtag every day how many people are talking about the brand that you've created. And I really don't use email anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm engaging guests, engaging people that are buying my wine via comments on Instagram or direct messaging on it. Instagram's my main, social media of choice. But create a hashtag, monitor that, and be quick to respond, and that really helps humanize the brand for sure.
I talk to people all the time, they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about going to business school. I'm like, great, what do you want to do? And they're like, I want to start a business. I'm like, you don't need to go to an MBA school for that. You just need an idea. So as it relates to what I do now, is 0%, maybe not 0%, but a small amount. And a funny anecdote, when I was first got to Ann Arbor, it's the first week of classes, and they had like this alumni panel came back, and someone asked the panel, if you had to do business school all over again, what would you do differently? And 9 out of the 10 panelists said, oh man, I would take more people classes. Well, sure enough, the people class comes around, right around when recruiting's happening, and that's the class that everybody ditches so they can do the interviews for whatever company they're going to work for. As I sit on the panel, I would say if I were to go to business school again, I would do the people class all over again. Moral of the story is very little application for what I do now has to do with having an MBA. We talked about the Google MBA kind of being the best way to do it. Go to MBA school because you want some enriching experience that program gives you. For me, it was a way to do undergrad all over again and all this stuff, not from a party perspective, from an education perspective. So have a specific reason to go to MBA school and then do it.
I guess having a specific reason in general is key. It's like if you know what you want to do, I think if you're going to school for something because you need that degree specifically to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, that's cool. But I think if you know what you want to create and do, you don't need to go to school to open a business. And if you want to hire somebody that has an MBA, and if you want to, with the amount of money you'd spend on the MBA, you can hire people to consult you along the way that are seasoned, people with an MBA or not. So I think the big thing is knowing what you want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, then, school's okay, I think, but I just think it's unnecessary if you know what you want to do and you just want to open up a business.
What I'm excited about now, there's all these courses that are hyper-specific. So I'm enrolled now in a course at eCornell, and it's all about plant-based nutrition. And I'm absolutely loving it because it's so relevant to my day-to-day world. I would say I seek out something that's very specific, and I guess that you have to know what you want to do. But there's so many great resources out there that might have more real-world application.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing. This was a very awesome panel. You guys are all very cool. Thank you.